Hello and welcome to Cracking the Rich Code, the podcast. I'm your host, John Verico. And I say this a lot, and I always say I have a very special guest with me. And this is a guy I've recently met as we were preparing to meet for this podcast. And we started chatting, and I said, boy, this is somebody I wish I'd had in my life a lot earlier and knew a lot sooner because I probably could have learned so much. So, with us today in Cracking the Rich Code, Volume 14, is this very unique individual. His name is Mike Jacobs, and Mike is a financial advisor. And in his chapter in Volume 14, he provides some advice to his younger self, financial advice that I wish I knew, and I bet you wish you knew as well. So, we're going to get to talk a little bit about that with our special guest, Mike Jacobs. Mike, how are you today?
I'm good, John. How are you?
I'm doing outstanding. If we're any better, I'd have to be twins to enjoy it.
That's one way to look at it.
Absolutely. So we chatted a little bit before we came on to the show today, and I got to learn a little bit about you. And I really want to have our our listeners and our viewers understand a little bit more about, who is this dude named Mike Jacobs, and tell us a little bit about kind of who you are and what you do.
Well, I believe that my passion stems from my past. So for the last 25 years, I've been working with individuals, families, small, medium, large size companies, creating financial strategies on the family side, how people can retire on their own terms, how to help support an aging parent, how to fund the college experience, how to make sure that they're properly protected in developing assets and then giving it all back to the government after you're gone. What if they want to be more philanthropic or start a business or tax efficiency? So 25 years on that, working with companies, able to do retirement packages, benefits packages, exit strategies. And then when I seemingly have some time to decompress, I also own a commercial lending brokerage. So I deal with investors when it comes to real estate and PO factoring and inventory factoring and healthcare financing and equipment leasing. So all of that being said, over the last 25 years, my goal, my mission, and my passion overcome what I believe is a huge problem in this country, which is a lack of financial education.
And that is so true. So many of us kind of really, you hear save, save, save. You hear, invest, invest, invest. You hear a lot of different types of advice from a lot of different folks at different times. And so for the average person, we don't really know what it is that we should be doing. Like, whose advice should we be taking? And having somebody who really kind of understands what finance really means is probably really important to folks. So how did you get involved in this? Now, I know you said it was important, but what made you kind of dig into this type of work?
A question that I often get asked, to answer your first question, I got into this business, this industry completely on accident. I had no intentions of getting involved in it. I sat down with a financial planner when I was 30. We're going on 25 years later. Looking back on it, I realized that I knew a little about a little, but there was a lot about a lot that I did not know. The one thing I did know was I wasn't happy with what my money was doing for me. And the very definition of insanity is keep doing what you're doing and expecting a different result. Right? So
true.
I began to understand, the guy was like, if we do this and we reallocate this and we restructure this and we're doing all of this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, one, why is nobody teaching this? I'm 30 years old at the time. I hadn't heard of 90% of what he was. And then I'm like, I can't be the only person after hearing this information that would be thinking what I'm thinking. My entrepreneurial spirit started when I was 10 years old. I found out very early on, if you want to be successful in business, you need to be doing one of two things: somebody's need and or satisfying somebody's want. So when I look at financial literacy in this country does a horrible job of educating people how money works, how they can make money work better for them. So I'm like, money never gets old. It's never boring. Right? So then I'm like, need and want, right? Are people ever going to stop having kids? No, right? Two entities in this universe that go undefeated: Father Time, Mother Nature. Everybody gets older. All Americans going to need some type of long-term care. Nobody's and how money works. I can't tell you how many times I've spoken with parents, and one of the things that they'll tell me is to be able to have a financial conversation with my kids, but I don't really understand myself. How do I have a conversation with my kids about something I don't understand myself?
Yeah. I remember those conversations with
Right?
my own parents going, hey, I've got this insurance and I've got this bank account and this is where the key to the safe deposit box is kept. And, those kinds of things. And, here's my will and those other kinds of things. But as far as, truly understanding what all that means, and just, again, they were just doing the basic stuff that they knew, right? A savings account in the bank,
Right.
Maybe, some sort of a plan, a mutual fund or something. But most of the time, like in our parents' generation, they certainly didn't have access to those things or didn't think about them.
Well, it's interesting because you and I are probably a couple of years apart. Can't even believe I'm saying this, 53 years old.
I've got a little bit
my
more on you. I'm
parents,
66.
okay. So
still,
we're on the outskirts of the same generation, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
So at least for my parents were that first generation that when they were a little bit younger than us, instead of having a pension to rely on, right?
Mm-hmm.
I worked home in the company that I worked for 50 years. I was going to keep paying me. Well, really around ish, companies, damn, people are living longer, right?
Yeah.
So if we have to keep paying them, they're retired beneficiaries, and we got to keep paying the beneficiaries. It's like, how long can we survive as a company paying people all that money? So we need to come up with a way to transfer the situation in. Okay. Now my employer sets up the I have the ability to either contribute or not contribute. They can match or not match. So now we get into a couple of risk factors, right? Most people investing, which is a risk. You know what else is a risk? Thinking that I'm going to live to be 80 and live to be 105 years old.
Right, and run out of money before you get there.
Yeah, fun fact, 51,000 people in this country are currently 105 years old or older. I guarantee you none of them woke up one day 50 years ago and said, damn, I got another 50 years left to go. It sucks when you're young and broke. It's way worse when you are old and broke and have no earning ability.
Right.
So that's one risk. Sequential risk. Imagine this. It's 2008.
Real quick, Mike, would you say that's one of the biggest fears that people have is running out of money at this point in life?
That should be one of the bigger fears, but an unforeseen fear to have. Two entities in this universe that go undefeated. Father time, mother need. 2/3 of all Americans going to need some type of long-term care. God forbid I live in Manhattan, right? You and I grew up in New York. God forbid I live in
New York,
Manhattan.
yeah.
I can no longer take care of my. I don't want to be a burden to my family. I need 24-hour elder care. It's going to run me about $20,000 a month. Could you imagine having a $20,000 a month expense come out of nowhere and not be prepared for it?
Wow.
I'm going to throw that in the not good category.
Yeah, I'd say you're right. And my grandmother, into her 90s, still lived in a 3-story walk-up in Brooklyn. It's probably why she was hitting her
My
90s, was because she was
grandparents,
still exercising up and down the stairs to go to the grocery store.
my grandparents on my mom's side, God bless them. My grandfather was 5 years older than my grandmother. They were playing golf 3 times a week up until my grandmother was 87. My grandfather was 92.
Wow.
My uncle on my mom's side, 88 years old, or well, will be 88 in September. He's playing tennis 4 times a week.
Hey, my mother was
How do
85,
they
and
do
she
it?
was a dancer. My mother was a rockette back in the early 50s, and gave that all up to, to have a family and all that. But she still
Right.
was a dancer at heart, and so any opportunity that came up, later on in life, she'd be out there and dance. And at 70 years old, she married her third husband, and he was a singer, and they started performing again. So at 70 years old, her tap shoes come out of the closet, and she's performing, and she was dancing right, and performing with her husband at senior centers where she was older than half the residents, and right up until she passed away at 85. 2 weeks before she passed, she was still dancing and performing. But yeah, it's that activity that keeps us going.
Yeah. You can't wake up one day and have nothing to do, because you will, I use this term loosely, you will expire much more rapidly. Right? I remember, my grandfather on my mom's side passed away at 99 years old. At 80, talking to my uncle, and he was like, it seems like all my friends are passed. Like, I'm the last survivor of my generation. I mean, imagine living in that reality where all your friends and family and so on are no longer there. Then imagine not being able, you reach a point where you can no longer take care of yourself, and you don't want to be a burden to your kids or your grandkids. But it's not something that we think about, because if you really think about it, when I was 20, I thought 25 was old. When I was 40, I thought 50 to 55 was old.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, pushing my mid 50s, I'm like, well, damn, I'm becoming old. I'm having to face this reality. I'm not ready to leave this floating rock that we call a planet. But do I see myself living to be 85, 90, 95? Probably not. But what happens if I do? Am I prepared for it?
Yeah.
Will I be able to afford it?
Mike, you've taken on quite an important role in society, helping people to face this reality and to look forward. And so I want to make sure that people know how to reach you, so they can learn from you and get your advice. So you can contact Mike at michael.jacobs@tfaconnect.com, and so you definitely want to check him out. Um, Mike, it's really great talking to you and learning from you right now, just kind of like setting up the situation that you're helping people with. But you said something earlier in the conversation, and I don't want to get off of this too far, but early in the conversation, you said something about, kind of starting as an entrepreneur at 10 years old. Could you really kind of, let's go into that a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about that background.
Okay, so both sets of my grandparents, mom and dad side, had their own companies. So I grew up in environment, even though my parents were part of the traditional corporate America. So having grown up in New York, the elementary school that I went, the fifth graders, to Washington, D.C. to go see the monuments, the museums, and everything else that it has to offer. So this is going to be more than a one-day trip. And I remember getting the permission slip. So I'm bringing the permission slip to my parents. The cost of the trip was going to be about $250. And my parents said the words that would ultimately define my future to a great extent. Right? They're like, go raise some money. And I'm looking back on it thinking, am I supposed to do? They're like, don't worry, you'll figure it out. Really? I lived within half a mile of the elementary school, middle school, and the high school. Now I'm dating myself here because right around time was when they introduced the ability to take cans and bottles and whatever and go return it for 5 cents a piece. So,
we had
okay,
those.
yeah, this is something that I could do, but this is when the power of numbers started to creep into my head because I'm like, okay, 20 cans per dollar, 250. I'm like, God damn, that's cans. How am I going to find 5,000 cans? So this was in the beginning of May, and the trip was going to be taking place in June. So right around the time that Little Leagues are
not a lot
forming,
of time to earn that money.
No, but Little Leagues are starting to form, and I'm walking around to different ballparks. Apparently, it was a lot safer back then for a 10-year-old to be walking around. So I get there, I'm watching these games, I'm noticing that these kids are all going through a lot of water and soda and whatever. And it came out to about 30 cans per team, right? So each game, $1.50 per team, $3, $3 a game, 3 games a day, 3 fields. Now we're talking $27 a day. Problem number one, how am I going to take away $27 a day worth of cans? The coaches, I said, look, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. If I bring you some trash bags, can you just have the kids put the cans in the bag? I'll come pick. Great. Problem number two.
I love how you analyzed each. I love how you analyzed each step and each problem that you were like you anticipated what problem you were going to face, and then you came up with a solution before you implemented. This is great.
Well, the beauty of a 10-year-old is we know we're just kind of taking it as it comes, and then we stumble across the solution, and then it's just a matter of, okay, am I going to follow through with it or am I not?
Well, that's
right?
the glory of being
So
a 10-year-old
now,
too, is like you don't know what's not possible.
exactly, and you're not
yeah.
afraid of somebody telling you no. So you're just
gonna.
that's the beauty of a 10-year-old. So now I'm like, okay, it's not like slap all these bags of cans and go and cash out. So fortunately, I lived literally from the deli. My sister, 8 years older than I am, knew the owner of the deli. So she goes in and says, look, this is what my brother's doing. This is why he's doing it. Brings the cans in, right? And like, no problem. Just have them dump them in the back. I'll take care of them. Then now, 27 days, 10 days, $270. It's true to form, match me dollar for dollar. And as a 10-year-old, I'm walking around $190 in spend.
That and that is some significant
That
money.
is,
Especially,
well, this is 40
we're talking
some odd years ago.
I was just going to say, yeah, that's in 1980s money. Yeah.
Yeah, 80s money. So I was doing pretty well for myself. So when I saw that was the component of my chapter in the book. Component age 10 through 18. Much like many other kids, I collected baseball cards, right? Took my allowance, spent most of it buying these cards. My brother, who's 5 years older than I, this was one of the things also that we were on, for lack of a better term. So I got around to trade shows and the different card shops, and this was to commodities, something that could be
Right.
bought or sold, you make or you lose money. Here, the commodity was baseball cards. So I bought new stuff, accumulated, then I traded up for older cards. The older cards always carry more value because they're more
Yep.
rare. So now I'm trading back to get off condition older cards so that I can trade back up to get mint condition newer cards to trade back to get bigger, better, older cards. Now, my one and only goal out of all of this was to get the 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle
Mickey
rookie
Mantle.
card. At the
I was just
time,
going to mention
it
that card.
was, yes. At the time, the card was worth about $50,000.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a mint condition Mickey Mantle rookie card is going for about $25 million. So you could imagine the hurdle that I'm trying to get to a $50,000. So I'm buying, selling. I pick up Sandy Koufax's rookie card, Roberto Clemente's rookie card, Hank Aaron's rookie card. Granted, not in the greatest condition, but I amassed quite a bit over 8 years. Fast forward to 18, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe it's time to get out, but I'm going to take the last stab at getting that freaking card. So my brother and I, we go to one of the larger regional shows in Atlantic City. There, I have a couple of $100. I find about a 7 out of 10 Mickey Mantle rookie card and let the games begin. For the next 2 hours, my brother's sitting there smiling ear to ear, right? As it's going down, negotiating back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. I was determined to get this damn card. We reached the point after 2 hours, everything that I had, everything that my brother had, and keep in mind, you know, this is 1989.
Sure.
So
Yep.
you didn't have the ability to pay with your phone or whatever you had. Fell $100 short of getting this card.
Oh, no.
And this vendor would not give it up. I just spent the last 8 years of my life to literally have my tippy toe be 1 inch away from crossing the finish line, and it didn't happen.
Wow.
I'm like, unbelievable. Now, the end result of all of that, this is how I paid for my first car, was cashing out on my baseball cards.
I paid for my wedding by selling my comic books. So yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And when we look back on it, it's like, oh my God, if I sold it enough to get my wedding today.
I know.
Right?
I know.
This actually is something. I have an aunt on my dad's side that's 92 years old, right? She used to tell me this when I was like sub 18, and she would talk about, you know, buy, hold, grow old. She has stocks that she's owned for 7.
Oh, wow.
She'd buy 100 shares of this, 100 shares of that, buy, hold, grow old. So she amassed a certain amount of wealth, not because she was lucky, not because she right place, right time. It was her philosophy of buy whole, grow old. And that era, you know,
Yeah.
my great grandparents, the people that grew up during the Depression, these people were like, you don't buy what you can't pay for cash. You're always going to be putting some money away because you never want to be in that situation where you had no control. This brings me to part 3 of my chapter.
And we're
I
running out of
am
time too.
all right,
So
so I will speed
I
this
just
up.
want to. Well, no, we'll talk about it. I just want to
So,
let people know that we're listening. We're talking with Mike Jacobs, who is featured in Cracking the Rich Code Volume 14. Go ahead, Mike.
okay, so third component. I'm 15 years old. I'm sitting in my grandmother's house, and my aunt and my grandmother are trying to make a transaction. My grandmother had this gaudy ass ring that had diamonds swirling up. Now, at the time, she was having the diamonds cleaned, but I still saw this ridiculous thing. My aunt is wearing this gold chain, right? Bigger than my taste, but hey, this is, back in the 80s, so everything was bigger and more ostentatious. So they're going back and forth, right? The value of these things, keep in mind, it's gold. So there's definite value to these things.
Yep.
So it was interesting watching what they're doing because behind the scenes, they're trying to have what be worth less. Hey, this ring is worth X amount of dollars, that's dollars. How do we make up this gap? Meanwhile, making the case that no, this thing is worth that, right? How do you negotiate value? Now, what one thing would you think a 15-year-old kid should never ask and a grandmother of the Jewish variety?
Yeah. How
What's
much
the
is that
one
worth?
question you do not ask? Are these things real?
What is? Oh.
You never ask that. I asked it because I
Oh.
wanted to stir the pot. I'm watching this go on for like an hour, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to be a little bit of a dick here. So I asked her, I said, are these things real? And the stare that I got was priceless. At the end of the day, they were able to figure out a deal, but just watching this negotiation going back and forth and the tactic, so when I'm looking at the commercial lending side of things, when I'm looking at the financial planning side of things, sometimes the negotiations that we have to come from within. Meaning, okay, I have 3 kids right now. Average cost of college for 4 years of undergrad is going to run between 150 and 200 grand. So if I multiply that by 3, damn, I got to come up with 450 to 600,000
At
just to
least
send
half
my
a
kids
mil.
to
Yeah.
college. At least $500,000. How am I going to do this? Am I going to need to cut back on what I'm spending on? Are there places where I can go where I could be more tax efficient so I don't need to, if I don't have to worry about the taxes? Am I going to be able to get student loans? To me, the FAFSA, the government organization for the student loans, they have 2 buckets of money.
Mm-hmm.
1, includable asset. 2, excludable asset. My income are stocks, bonds, mutual funds, 401ks, 529 plan, UGMA account, UPMA account. All of that counts against me, and it is going to lower my ability to get student loans. Excludable assets, equity in my owner-occupied home, money in my life insurance and my retirement accounts. None of it counts me when it comes time for student loans.
Retirement accounts, really? Good.
Same amount of money. Yeah. The same amount of money, 50 grand, 100 grand, half a million set aside. But if I put it in bucket A, it all counts against me. If I put it in bucket B, structuring my money for the purpose, whatever that, retirement planning, education funding, supporting an aging parent, is they all have their own.
Right.
So I can benefit because of different types of retirement. My least favorite word in the English language, taxes.
Yeah.
I somewhat equate the tax man to Santa Claus. He knows when you're awake and he's got the reindeer spy. This is your IRS guy spying on you. So how do I legally structure things to get out of the tax now, not have to transition into tax later, and on the gains of my money, be able to transition to tax never? You know, I like to ask stupid questions. I'm going to ask you, John.
Those are,
when it comes to the growth of your money,
mm-hmm.
When it comes to the growth of your money, John, would you rather pay taxes now, later, or never?
Well, if I said anything other than never, you'd probably shoot me. No.
Well, I'd be
like,
a little concerned, but
yeah. Like, what's wrong with this dude? Yeah.
This dude.
Mike, I wish like I said in the introduction, I wish I had a chance to meet you earlier and learn from you earlier in life. I'm at that stage now where I'm looking at that, where are we going from here? And I tell people I'm not doing too bad because I'm 66 and I'm working on my second million, but that's because the first one didn't work out. So I started from scratch. You can use that joke, Mike.
Thanks.
Everybody,
I
we are
appreciate
speaking with we are speaking with Mike Jacobs, who is a financial advisor extraordinaire, financial strategist, I think is probably even a better term. You can contact Mike. You definitely want to check out his chapter in volume 14 of Cracking the Rich Code. And you can contact Mike at michael.jacobs@tfaconnect.com. And his info will be in the show notes. Mike, this has been delightful. I wish we had a longer show, but I really love the stories and so enlightening about your young entrepreneurship. And I think people will really be inspired by your energy, your positive outlook. And I think some people are going to reach out to you and say, hey, dude, kind of show me this tax never strategy. Wouldn't that be great?
I'll leave you with this. For the listeners out there, if you would like to learn how to help somebody to acquire a composting facility by leveraging an asset that they did not own and came out of pocket $0, I'd love to be able to share that story with you.
I would love to learn it. Maybe we'll see if we can get you back on the show at a later date. We have a lot of authors to introduce on this show, but I think we're going to try to get some folks back. So I would love to have that.
I'd love to do it anytime.
Mike, this has been great. Thank you so much for your time. And folks, tune in to Cracking the Rich Code, the podcast, on YouTube and on the Cracking the Rich Code Facebook page. It's also on my YouTube channel. I just try to give it a little extra eyes that way. And I also put it up on my LinkedIn so you can check it out as well, so people can find it out there. We've had a great conversation today with Michael Jacobs. Mike, you have a great day, and thanks again for being on the show.
Thanks, John. Appreciate you.